Hi everyone, welcome back to the Movie Reviewers 100. My name's Scott, also known as Cineram here on YouTube. I do the Thursday reviews. I'm down here in the basement because it's nice and cool down here. It got really hot in Chicago yesterday, and then of course there was an incredible downpour, which is what usually happens here in Chicago. So this week we're talking about Ewan McGregor, who's been killing it, absolutely killing it since like 1995, 96 when he appeared into Danny Boyle movies, Shallow Grave, and then Trainspotting a year later. At least that's when they came out here in the U.S. I wanted to talk about Moulin Rouge because it's one of those movies that really sort of like works because of his talent and his charisma. I hadn't seen the movie in a bunch of years. When I first saw it in the theater, I was just sort of blown away and overwhelmed by it, and I ranked it really high on my best of the year list. I'm not sure that I would do that if it was just coming out now. But partly because I'm not watching the movie theater anymore. I'm watching it on a much smaller screen, and so it doesn't have the power that it had then. This movie was directed by Baz Luhrmann, who did Romeo and Juliet, of course, and then he went on to do Australia with Nicole Kidman, who is, of course, Ewan's co-star in Moulin Rouge. What else has he done? I know he's done one other movie that I'm forgetting, aside from Strictly Ballroom, which came up before Romeo and Juliet with DiCaprio and Claire Danes. Anyway, most of the time I don't really care for his style, and in this one it's just sort of like kind of the same thing, except somehow it just works. There's a magnificence to some aspects of this movie. The story is set basically at the turn of the century, 1899. Right before the switch over to the 20th century, in Paris. Specifically takes place in a village in Paris called Montmartre. And Ewan McGregor's character Christian arrives from London because he's romantic and an aspiring poet, and he wants to live among other artists, and that is basically the place that he's heard is where all that stuff goes down. Basically, it's a community of artists, and he's just in love with the idea of being artist and writing about love and writing about truth and beauty and all that stuff, except that he's never really been in love. And as the scene goes in the movie, he says, "Luckily, at that moment, an unconscious Argentinian crashed through my roof." And it's at that point that he meets basically Toulouse-Lautrec, who is a real person. All these characters are fictional except for Toulouse-Lautrec, who's played by John Leguizamo. And this cadre of artists, actors, musicians who are who are writing a play, basically, to be put on at this venue called the Moulin Rouge, which is run by Harold Zidler, who's played by Jim Broadbent. The first movie I ever saw Jim Broadbent in was The Crying Game. I've seen him in a bunch of stuff since, but this is one of his big showcase roles of his career. He was nominated for an Oscar for Iris alongside Judi Dench, but he didn't win for that one. I don't think he was nominated for this movie, but Nicole Kidman was nominated and Ewan McGregor wasn't. I'm getting off topic. Anyway, they recruit Christian because he has this poetic talent, and they want him to help them put on the show, which they then take to Zidler, who runs the Moulin Rouge, and convince him to put on this show. And of course, Christian immediately becomes infatuated with Satine, the lead courtesan of the show, of the Moulin Rouge. The Moulin Rouge is not only just a dance hall and a nightclub, it's also a bordello. And they use the term prostitute like one time in the whole movie, and whore, really, but they sort of romanticize the profession a lot for the most part. They say basically Satine is a courtesan, a woman who sold her love to men. In other words, she has sex with them. And so when they meet, there's this whole series of comical misunderstandings whereby she thinks that he's a duke who's there to fund the play. But as it turns out, he's just the writer, and there's this whole sort of misunderstanding involving the real Duke, who's played by Richard Richard Roxburgh? Yeah, that's right. I haven't seen Richard Roxburgh in too many movies aside from this one. And in the year previously, he was like the right-hand henchman to the villain in Mission Impossible 2. Anyway, he's quite a simpering, sniveling, unpleasant character. He talks like this all the time. He's like, "The pleasure, my dear, will be entirely mine." He has a really, really over-the-top performance, and most of the performances in this movie are pretty over the top. But the character played by Nicole Kidman, Satine, she is so taken with Christian, Ewan McGregor, and his poetry and his romantic nature that she falls immediately in love with him. But then, of course, she has to pretend to still be interested in, for the benefit of the Duke, for the benefit of their production, because he's funding the whole thing. It just gets really, really complicated after a while. And the Duke agrees to fund the show, but only if he has a contract, basically, that binds Satine to him exclusively, meaning she can't, service any other men except for him. And, there's this whole sort of romantic deal, or pseudo-romantic deal, I should say, with him wooing her with a fancy dinner and jewels and everything like that, but really he's, paying for her services by funding the play. He also, unfortunately, also demands the deed of the Moulin Rouge, meaning he basically owns the theater. The pressure is on Satine and Christian to hide their relationship from him, otherwise he'll pull the funding and he'll cause all kinds of misery for them. They really want to put on this show because they don't just want to be a dance hall and a bordello anymore. They want to, be theater people. They would probably make less money, actually, if they did that. But it's their dream. That's their dream that they want. They're all romantics. The hook for this movie, actually, is the music. The music is comprised almost entirely of songs that already exist. Songs that never weren't written or recorded at the time the film is set. It's set in 1899, and almost all of it is popular music from the 1940s on forward. Including like Nirvana, Madonna, Nat King Cole, the Beatles, U2. Just a huge variety of popular music from several decades worth, and it's all anachronistically. I'm probably saying that word wrong. Shoved into this movie as the music that's being created by the characters. Christian, one of the first things that he writes for the show is "The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music," which of course is from a musical, The Sound of Music, the Julie Andrews musical. But it's like that throughout the entire movie. There's all sorts of songs in there. Roxanne is a big number, the Police song, and it's interspersed and all. They're all sort of remixed and put together and rearranged. And some of the arrangements of these songs are just incredible. One of the first things that you hear in the movie after the titles is "Nature Boy," a song that Nat King Cole made famous, and it's got that refrain that's repeated throughout the whole movie, which is "the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return." And when I heard the arrangement and the strings, the magnificent strings that accompany it, was just like, whoa, man, this is really exciting. And it's just this flurry of energy. It's one of the most energetic, most fast-paced movies I've ever seen. The cutting is super rapid, and sometimes that can be annoying, but in this one it works incredibly well. It's like, a huge music video, and it's just relentless in its energy and its upbeat and everything. And Nicole Kidman and Jim Broadbent and Ewan McGregor, they really carry that energy quite well. I really wish that Ewan had gotten an Oscar nomination for this movie because he really sort of sells everything like that. It gets really ridiculous at times. Just the story and sort of the comical misunderstandings and just the whole sort of direction that the story goes gets kind of ridiculous after a while, but they sell it. They sell it like there's no tomorrow. And it's their enthusiasm and their sincerity which really makes the movie work. Like I said, I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, but it's one that I enjoyed more in the past, but still, it's got elements, it's got moments of magnificence to it, which really make it worth checking out, even if you're not into musicals. Because again, it's one of those movies where, with the typical musical, a lot of people don't like them because its characters just break out into song at a moment's notice, which isn't really realistic. But movies, musical movies have never really been realistic to begin with. So if you can accept that, then obviously you can accept what happens in the story. more easily. But yeah, it really is sold basically on the performances and on the energy and on the music, and those are the things that make this movie, as good as it is. So yeah, not to all taste certainly, and some of it is quite gaudy and over the top. In fact, a lot of it is over the top. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that is enjoyable if it's done the right way, and I certainly enjoyed as well. And Ewan McGregor, like I said, he's just been killing it for a long time. He's a terrific actor. I haven't seen the Western that he was in with Natalie Portman that got released recently called Jane Got a Gun. What I've read, it's not all that great, but, he's always someone who's worth looking into. And he's done lots of good work over the years, and this is one of the highlights, I think, of his career, especially in terms of showcasing why he's so great, is because he can help make something this crazy and ridiculous work and make it genuine. A long time ago, I was part of a live comedy improv group. And one of the things we did was movie scenes, basically, comical versions of movie scenes. And I got to actually play the Ewan McGregor part for a Moulin Rouge sketch that we did, which was great because we got to do the singing and everything like that. And there was it's basically just a bare stage, but there was a stool there, so I jump up on the stool for the "Love lifts us up where we belong," and everyone seemed to dig that, so that was a lot of fun. He's an inspiring guy, Ewan McGregor. He's an inspiring guy. And I always said, here's a guy, Ewan McGregor is the type of guy who can play a guy who's so drunk and wasted that he's about to pass out in a club, and yet he's still the most charismatic person in the entire scene. That's from, Velvet Goldmine. So anyway, enough of me rambling. Thanks very much for watching. If you haven't seen Moulin Rouge, it's well worth checking out. Please visit our Facebook page if you haven't. Please subscribe if you haven't. Thanks very much for watching again, and we'll see you again next week with a new theme. Later.